Hello, people. I am Jaby KOAY, joined by ACHARA KIRK.
What's up?
We're talking about KGF Chapter 2. This is our non-spoiler review. If you're looking for the spoiler review, don't leave because we'll be building off of concepts established in this video in order to talk about how we feel in the spoiler review coming out after this one at some point. ACHARA has the handy IMDb in her hands there, so if you see her look down, it's not because she's ignoring me.
Yes.
It's not because she is bored of doing this review. It's because she's trying to make sure that we've got all the information that we need. And so, who is the director of KGF Chapter 2?
Prashanth Neel.
And who is the stars? Rocking star Yash.
I was going to say that. Rocking star Yash.
Who else?
And then we've got Srinidhi Shetty. And then Ravina Tandon.
Okay.
Sanjay Dutt.
Of course. Yeah.
And Prakash Raj.
Okay. I got to do a re-review of KGF Chapter 1 with Sintel. That should be out already, part 1 of it, and then part 2 and 3 will be following in the coming days after that. Anyway, I actually really enjoyed going back through KGF Chapter 1 because my first experience with it was, I think, positive generally speaking, but I had issues, quibbles about the editing.
Yes.
And I've mentioned that many times, right?
Many times.
And so I was mentioning in my review of the trailer, please, God, don't let the editing be too intense. And that was one of the first things I noticed in this movie was a very, very big positive, which is while there were some moments where it was like chopping up and editing really fast, I felt that the editing was a lot more measured in this one. And you told me that it was a 19-year-old that edited this movie.
Yeah, so we received an article from a friend of ours, Kartik. He showed me this article which says 19-year-old Ujwal Kulkarni, the editor of KGF Chapter 2, he used to edit short films and make fan edits. Prashanth Neel liked his edit of KGF Chapter 1, took him to make a teaser cut for KGF Chapter 2.
Wow.
Impressed by Ujwal's work, Neel had put editing work of the entire movie in Ujwal's hands.
I have
He's
never heard of
19.
anything like that ever happening, ever.
This is
crazy.
the power of the internet, you
No,
guys.
but that's insane because there are lots of people who make fan edits and stuff like that. Like I used to do amateur music videos back in the day, and now you actually have the power to reach the director by doing a fan edit of something. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, cool. So I appreciated the editing in this. I really, really liked it. For the most part, compared to Chapter 1. That was one of the shining things, one of the things that makes it so much better than Part 1 for me, because I actually could appreciate what was happening. Like there were scenes that breathed as opposed to getting every single angle they shot in the movie, in there. There were still moments throughout the film that felt like it was blinking a lot, like a movie trailer or something like that. Like you said, it felt like a music video.
It did.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, it was beautiful. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
The cinematography is stunning. And that's what we come to expect. Like, I love the color palette of this movie.
Right.
That kind of like muted tones, high contrast. Yeah, just like really, really stylized.
Right.
But there were certain times where I felt the editing was like a music video.
Right.
Yeah.
But in general, I would say my feelings are quite positive about the editing.
Yeah,
compared
I'd say
to
it was
compared to the first
definitely
one. It was an improvement.
improvement,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So let's focus on the story, I guess. Or actually, before we jump into the story, let's talk about Yash, Rocking
my
Star
God.
Yash. The big takeaway with KGF and KGF Chapter 2 is that Yash is just... He's the star,
He's
right?
the star, and it's
so-
definitely a brilliant vehicle for him.
Right.
Like, he's so cool.
Well, he's got so much swag.
So much
right?
swag.
Swag OP.
Yeah. Swag OP
And
to the max.
that was very much presented in Chapter 1, and it continues here in Chapter 2. And I think that's the biggest thing when you're watching this film is he's so charismatic. He's so fun to watch. He's just a delight. Whatever he's doing in the movie, he's delightful to watch.
Well, his entrance when
Right.
he comes in, it was such a fantastic entrance. And I can imagine how wild audiences must have gone in India because we're in LA in Burbank.
Right.
You know, our theater had about, what,
8
like
people.
6, 7 people? Yeah, eight people max.
There was a baby running around.
Oh, yeah, there was a baby running around.
Yeah.
And that part where he was revealed,
Yeah.
there was one guy sitting next to us who was like, "Wah!" I was like, oh my God, if he's like this,
Yeah.
what must it have been like to watch this in India or in Karnataka?
Right.
You know, it was probably mental. Everybody was losing their damn minds. And I wish I could have been there to experience the hype like that.
Yeah, I think that watching it with a proper audience fundamentally changes the experience. I mean, we established this with Spider-Man No Way Home. It's like you can't watch that movie without the audience. And we had to watch this film the way we did because we didn't know how many people were going to be there. We watched it where we could, where it was available to us. And there was only 8 people in the theater. We got some pretty good seats and watched it in the optimal situation.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I still felt the power of Rocking Star Yash in this film.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that I like about this movie, over the first one is a more focused central villain. I mean, obviously there are multiple villains in both, but I feel like from the get-go, from the trailer, we knew Sanjay Dutt was going to be a big villain in this movie,
Yes.
right? And I really appreciated that because in the first one, I was kind of being taken in a lot of different directions. Watching it again, I knew to expect that, but I was still by the end going, oh, okay, that's the central villain in chapter 1. Whereas here, I always knew Sanjay Dutt was gonna, because he's a big star, right?
Yeah.
I always knew he was gonna be a big villain in this film, and that helped me to sort of know where this thing was headed ultimately in the story.
Sure.
Sanjay Dutt was a great addition to the KGF series for me because I think that there's just such a presence about him. And I know that when we watched it, he was probably dubbed because it was in Kannada,
Yes.
not Hindi, which he
Yes.
speaks, right?
Yeah.
And so whatever the case is, just like a Jay Devgan in RRR, even though he's dubbed, he still has a presence about him.
Yeah.
And that Sanjay Dutt accomplishes the same thing here. I just like to watch him, and he totally like fits right into this environment, that smoky contrast you feel with his outfit that looks like it came from medieval times.
Yeah, it was very interesting, the outfit, because I liked it. I liked the look, but in the context of the movie, I was kind of like, I don't understand this.
Oh, I didn't care.
But this is fine, I guess.
For me, I just bought right into it because I'm approaching this the way I would approach an anime. You're gonna get some random stuff that maybe doesn't necessarily fit in. Like, that's not from the 80s, but like, I just went with it anyway.
I do think that they pointed it out in the beginning because they mentioned something about him liking
sword.
Vikings or something
Yeah.
like that. And so I was like, okay, I guess I can get on board with that.
Yeah.
But sometimes my brain was like, wait, what? Why? Why the makeup?
Right.
Why the clothes? Why the sword? But he looks cool.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the story a little bit. I think that, you know, having rewatched KGF Chapter 1, I'm sorry that you didn't get to.
Yeah.
Having rewatched KGF Chapter 1, I realized, but you still felt similar to me, which is the story of KGF Chapter 1 was actually better than KGF Chapter 2.
Yeah. I remember, for me, the thing that stuck out for the story for KGF Chapter 1 was the whole thing about his mother and that strong desire to achieve his mother's dream.
Right.
You know, and he wanted to get all the gold for her.
Right.
And that I feel like that's something that, as an audience member, you can really get into it. It's a good hook.
Yeah.
And that was kind of lacking for me in this movie.
Sure. Well, when you go to KGF Chapter 1, you know, she tells him that he has to become wealthy, right? And so wealthy is an ambiguous word because initially he goes in with one objective in mind.
Yeah.
And his goal is to delete someone. His goal is to eliminate someone,
Yeah.
right? That's his mission because that will equal owning Mumbai. But then he encounters like 20,000 people in KGF and he goes, oh, like, this is my mission now. So this thing that set him on his path isn't necessarily what he's there to do anymore. Now he's got a new mission. His wealth isn't necessarily riches. It's love from the people now. And,
Sure.
you know, and so there's that interpretation, that angle to it. And I actually thought that was really cool and gives it a nice character arc. But then when you pick up in this movie, it's like, no, it was all about the riches. And, you know, like, that's a very, very, very important part of this movie is the riches and him owning Mumbai, and not just Mumbai, but like
The world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that is a very, very important part of this. It's hard to talk about the story without going into spoilers. I'm going to try my best to navigate these waters carefully. But basically, the connection I had to Rocking Star Yash, or Rocky, in this movie was not as strong as the first one because the film did something that I didn't like about the first one even more here, which is it makes it aloof. There's a lot of talking about Rocky
Yeah.
and disconnecting you from him, and it's sort of like this, making him this larger-than-life biblical legend as opposed to us connecting with him as a character.
I think that's the thing. You've hit the nail right on the head for me because as I was watching it, I was thinking, my God, was there this much narration in the first
There was narration,
movie?
but it wasn't as much as it is here.
Yeah, because I was kind of going, please, show me, don't tell me.
Yeah.
Like, let me just experience this instead of you telling me all the things that he did. Like, just show me so I can, like, live and experience that with him.
There was a fair amount of narration in the first one, but the story was a little bit more linear, even though it's jumping back and forth between people saying what's going on and then following the story and then jumping back to the people who are talking about what's going on, and the guy who's narrating kind of jumps ahead in the story a little bit. There's a little bit of non-linear stuff where it's playing around, but for the
Yeah.
most part, you can see this linear timeline of the story of what he's there to do. Whereas in here, there was a linearness to the story, but I had a hard time connecting the dots more here. I'm like, okay, it's beautiful.
Yes.
And I see stuff happening, but I don't know why any of it is happening.
I think I just lacked a sense of connection to a lot of the characters.
Okay, yeah. I was about to give away a spoiler. I'm like, let me stop myself. That being said, I did have fun watching the movie. You know,
it was entertaining.
There was a lot of moments where I had a good time, and much like the first one. But okay, someone told you that it was like the best action movie ever, right?
Yes.
And so what happened for me was I felt like I was being teased with the best action ever because of the way it was being edited. It's like there was a car chase sequence in the film where it blacks out a lot, as if I'm watching a Michael Bay movie trailer, and I'm like, I want to see what's happening. I understand the idea is that it's supposed to be, again, it's creating this sort of mythological figure of like, who is this Rocky guy? Look what he's capable of. He's like a god. He'll just come in and destroy you. And like with one car, with his muscle car, he took out all this what do you call it? Caravan of people.
Yeah.
Right? I want to see that unfold, like watching Mad Max, because that's kind of what it's modeled after. And so let me look at all that beautiful action that you guys spent all this money, time, effort, energy on. Let me see it. But what's happening is it's all being covered up and compensated with a bunch of blackout moments, and you're just jumping to the next moment. I'm like, but why? It's a movie. I want to see it. So that was frustrating for me to watch. Without giving anything away, I think that the action in the final portion of the film kind of made up for that. So there was some really good stuff, really exciting stuff in the final portion of the film.
I actually also really liked a lot of the action in the beginning as well. I liked the motorbike stuff. A lot of that car stuff was really cool, and they had some really great ideas with that last fight scene as well. Like the choreography in that was pretty creative. So yeah, as an action entertainer, definitely achieved its goal. I just wish for me that I had felt more of a connection with the characters, and I guess mostly just the characters and the story more.
The music was cool.
The music was great,
For me, I don't know if this was an inspiration for it, but it like just gave me nuances of Avengers in terms of the theme song.
Oh, yeah. And you know, there's something that you mentioned in our conversation on our way back from the theater, which is it felt very biblical to you. And I think like that's a perfect description. Like it's so epic. You know, it's this guy, and you mentioned it as well during this review, like it's mythological. He's larger than life. He's like invincible. It's just so big. And so if you kind of approach it from that sense, where it's like, it's about this guy who's like super swaggy and larger than life and epic and everything. I think when you go in with that, you're like, this is exactly what it says on the label, and this is what I got.
I think that structurally the story follows a similar setup to the first film in terms of like, here's a setback, and then here's what happens next. Because one of the things you said while watching this was it felt like there was no challenges. There was no stakes really at a certain point, and you didn't understand what the stakes were at a certain point. And I think I felt that disconnect as well, and that's why we lost our roots inside the film. Like, while this might be exciting for the target audience, it's just like so much swag and so much like style and whatnot, and that'll keep you going for 2.5, 3 hours. For us, I don't think that worked quite as well. And this is just being totally honest with you guys. But the first one, because the story was, I guess, simpler, even though it was kind of giving you a lot of moving parts, I was just mostly honed in on what Rocky was trying to do. Like a lot of the ancillary stuff, I just kind of ignored. I'm like, okay, that's not really that important. What's important is what Rocky's trying to do here. And Rocky's the central character, so let me just focus on that. And because of that, I was able to follow along more easily. And here, they were trying to give you the ancillary stuff again. And I'm like, okay, but that's not important to me. What's more important to me is Rocky, right? But even with that in mind, I'm like, I don't know why a lot of what's being done here is being done. And I can't get into that yet until we go into our spoilers. Yeah, it was beautiful to watch, though.
It was. I mean, barring any issues we had with character, with story, whatever, it's a beautiful movie. Yeah.
So you guys, that concludes our non-spoiler review. Thanks so much for hanging out. Please keep a lookout for our spoiler review, which will be coming out soon after this video. The next day, if you're watching this in order. So, thank you again for hanging out. I am Jaby KOAY. This is
ACHARA KIRK.
Peace out.